Today we're joined by our latest volunteer, Carrie Forrest, and she's an LDN user, and she's also the author of the website Clean Eating Kitchen. Thank you for joining us today, Carrie.
Thank you, Linda. It's so nice to see you, and it's really nice to be here.
So could you tell our listeners what it is you take LDN for?
Yes, I have a history of thyroid disease, autoimmune thyroid disease, which turned into thyroid cancer, which I was treated for in 2012. I also have PCOS, chronic fatigue, and migraines. So I mostly use LDN to manage my thyroid antibodies. And it's kind of weird because I don't have a thyroid anymore. But apparently, even if you've had your thyroid removed, your body, I guess, gets into a rhythm of still producing antibodies against your thyroid. So I started taking LDN to help manage those antibodies and really to kind of help prevent any other autoimmune disease from forming, because I had heard that once somebody has been diagnosed with one autoimmune disease, that I guess it can happen that you can maybe have more than one. And that actually happened to my dad. So I heard about LDN, and I had already been seeing a functional medicine physician, but at my next appointment, I mentioned it to him, and he agreed that it would be worth it to try for me to help bring those autoimmune thyroid antibodies down.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how long have you been taking LDN now?
So I think it was about 5 or 6 years when I first started taking it. And I also remembered that before I had that conversation with my doctor, I did my own research because I am trained to do nutrition and medical research. So it's something I really enjoy too. So I really jumped into all the research, and I found your book, and I literally, the volume 1 was the only one out at the time, the LDN book. And I read it, I mean, because it's very dense, I must have read through it at least 10 times. I was underlining, I was bookmarking pages in it. And I think I even brought it to my appointment with my doctor, and he ended up getting a copy and telling me that he really liked it. But yeah, that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And I expect that I'll probably be taking it for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so has it helped with your other conditions?
Yes, I consider it to be a miracle for me. I had been starting to get some joint pain, which made me really nervous. I was concerned that maybe I was developing some rheumatoid arthritis. And probably really quickly after I started taking LDN, my joint pain went away. It was really just in my hands. And I'm also a musician, so that's also really concerning. So, and then my thyroid antibodies have come down. They're not to 0, but they're in a much better level. And then also my overall inflammatory markers, because my doctor is a functional medicine doctor, so he does extensive lab work. And I know one of the lab markers that he looks at is something called fibrinogen, which I believe is a marker of inflammation, and that has come down. And I forgot to mention that I also have some IBS pretty much throughout my life, and that's pretty much fully managed now. So I have not developed any more autoimmune diseases at this point. And then my chronic fatigue markers, which my doctor also monitors by measuring, I guess, like viral loads. I think there's some specific lab tests that he can do to look for like Epstein-Barr virus markers. And those have stayed really stable and really haven't shown like any indication of being reactivated. So I consider it to be a huge success in me personally, And I pretty much tell everyone, my friends, because of course, autoimmune disease and health issues are rampant throughout our society. So if I have a friend who tells me they have developed, lupus or something, I'm always really forward about recommending the book and the website. And I got my husband taking LDN now too for different reasons.
Mhm. Well, as we were saying before we started, that LDN isn't the magic bullet. Diet is really important. If you are going to be a couch potato and just eat junk food, you're not going to get the best benefits out of LDN. So this is where you've come in to help our members by supplying healthy eating recipes, things that they can cook themselves quite easily at home. Would you like to explain what it is that you do with your recipes?
Yes. And I've been eating gluten-free and dairy-free for probably about 10 years now. Um, Even before I really knew I had thyroid disease, I was eating that way because I had started developing hives on my skin after I started eating. And I read that going gluten-free could maybe help with that. So I think I have a non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And also, I mentioned that I have PCOS. So I'm not sure that LDN has helped. I think I don't really know how much it's helped with PCOS. It seems to be very well managed now, but diet is a big component of managing the symptoms of PCOS. And going dairy free and gluten free is often recommended for PCOS. And then it turns out going gluten free and dairy free also seems to be recommended to help manage autoimmune disease. So eating this way has helped just pretty much across the board with all of my health conditions and symptoms. So around 2009, I started a food blog. And at that time, I was just starting my master's program in public health. And I really did not know how to cook. So I started documenting how I was learning how to cook and then some of the healthy recipes that I was developing. And then as I started becoming gluten-free and dairy-free, I really made the blog focused on gluten-free and dairy-free since I thought it would help other women with PCOS, chronic fatigue, autoimmune disease, thyroid disease. And so it's really developed from there. So of course, at the time when I started, being a food blogger was more of a hobby, and believe it or not, but it's a professional career now, which is kind of amazing. And I really love it. And I'm able to work from home, which goes well with my personality. And then if I have any kind of like migraines or fatigue or anything, it's just really nice to be able to have my own schedule. Although I do think I work more than I would work if I had a regular job, quote unquote. But being a business owner is really fun for me. So Linda, you told me that clean eating isn't necessarily a term that's used in the UK, and I think it's fairly well known in the US, but some people take offense to it and they think like clean eating is a judgment, like the opposite of clean eating is, I don't know, dirty or bad eating. But clean eating is really, it's not meant to be a judgment. It's meant to be like really talking about using real food ingredients. In my case, of course, I don't eat dairy or gluten because I can't, or, I don't feel well when I do. So, but clean eating doesn't have to be super restrictive, but it kind of means like instead of buying your dinner like in a box, the way I used to, like a box of pasta that has a pre-made sauce. And I'm not talking about a healthy one. I'm talking like a powdered sauce with lots of chemicals. And, that's how I used to eat, just packaged foods with lots of chemicals. And the ingredient list, you look at it, you can't even pronounce the words. But clean eating is meant to be like real food. So of course you could still have a pasta dish with a nice sauce, and that would be considered clean eating, but maybe you're using a whole wheat pasta, or in my case, you're using a gluten-free pasta that's maybe made from rice flour. So it's a really simple ingredient list. And then, using like fresh tomatoes and making a tomato sauce and fresh basil. So again, it's like the difference is not so much trying to make you feel guilty by saying, oh, I eat clean and you don't. It's just more like it's fresh, it's real food ingredients, and it's not full of chemicals. So just because a lot of people don't really, appreciate that is the meaning of clean eating. So I was really excited when you asked me if I wanted to share some recipes with the LDN community. And so I'm sending you recipes to include in the newsletter. So listeners can look in the newsletter and find recipes there. And then the Facebook group, which I think has, tens of thousands of members, I've started posting there, and people have been incredibly nice and receptive and interested in having healthier recipes. And it was funny because I think just recently I asked in the Facebook group what types of recipes people were interested in. And it was all the types of recipes that I write. So everything from vegan, plant-based, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, keto, paleo, low carb. I mean, obviously not all in one recipe, but I really do try to create a variety of recipes. And it made me feel really good to be in a place where people appreciate those types of recipes, because I am a pretty specialized food blogger. And so it just feels really good to be part of a community that wants those kinds of recipes, because, a lot of my food blogger friends, they might be healthy food bloggers, but they aren't necessarily, have the restrictions of needing to like manage chronic illness like, I do, and a lot of the LDN members do.
Mm-hmm. And we'll also have a section on the web page, on our website, a page of recipes, so people can go there easily to find them. And there'll be links to those recipes on your website as well, so people can find out more about you and what you've been doing. So that's pretty amazing. So what kind of recipes will be coming up next?
Well, as we're recording this, it's summertime here in the US, and boy, we're having a lot of hot weather. So I'm thinking about salads, and I do have a sweet tooth, I will say, although I can usually satisfy it with fresh fruits like mangoes, the really sweet fruits. But I do like to make, like I just made a blender sorbet, which was just frozen mango chunks, a little bit of almond milk, and a little bit of maple syrup, kind of to help cover the tartness of the mango. And I have a Vitamix blender, so I think you could also make it in a food processor, but just a simple recipe like that in minutes transforms into a delicious dessert, really satisfying and great on a hot summer day. And I also wanted to mention, Linda, I'm going to be sending some articles about like healthy eating on a budget, and a clean eating grocery list, and some other tips for people who are just maybe a little bit overwhelmed on how to get started. So I think you're planning to put that on the LDN website. So I'm going to be sending those over to you very soon.
It's very difficult initially, and I think you can remember when you go gluten-free, because if you read packaging, there's just about gluten in everything. It's surprising, isn't it? And sugar is in most things. I mean, soups, sauces, I mean, ketchup is really high in sugar. So you have to be very vigilant initially to find out what foods you can and can't eat. And it does seem very restrictive to start with, but then you find ways around which food you can have and which you substitute. And you have to, it's a change of a mindset, isn't it? So you think differently where food's concerned. And it's difficult eating out in the UK when you've got restrictions, but it still can be done. And the answer is to ask when you go out, you know, whatever it is you've chosen, to make sure that there's no gluten in it. I mean, a lot of places that I've been to, they will say, you know, there's no gluten in it, and they can do, we have roast beef and Yorkshire pudding in England, that they can do a Yorkshire pudding that is gluten-free. They can do a gravy that is gluten-free, but it's always worth asking. I was in America once and I asked, do you have a gluten-free menu? And they said yes. So it was okay, fine, sit down, choose what you want. So it looked like an ordinary menu. And I said, so where's the gluten-free? Oh, so it was, I can't remember the chain, but it was burgers in a bun, but it wasn't McDonald's. It was a higher class burger place than McDonald's. Anyway, what it was the ordinary menu minus the bun, minus, and it wasn't a gluten-free menu. It was an ordinary menu, but removing the gluten.
I see. Yeah.
Which meant all the elements that had gluten in were just removed, and I was absolutely amazed.
Yes, it's become a lot more common here in the US. I can't believe it. I was at a tourist attraction yesterday with a friend from out of town, and we just walked into a place. I had not done any research because it was a place she wanted to go to, just kind of spur of the moment, and they had gluten-free options. I couldn't believe it. I felt so happy, and it just, you know, made me not feel so weird, you know, not to have to, I didn't even have to ask about what was gluten-free. It was clearly marked. And so it has become a lot more common.
I know if I have anything with gluten in, I have I suffer with acid reflux. And I have to take medication. I don't have to take it if I stick to a gluten-free diet. So if somebody tells me there isn't gluten in something and I eat it, and if there is a trace of it, I am up all night with really bad acid reflux. So
Wow.
that's my marker of knowing what I've eaten and what I shouldn't. It really does upset my stomach. So what's the point? You know, and I've had it for years and years. Probably a good 30 years, where I had to take medication I wouldn't have done if I had had a gluten-free diet. So
I know. I'm hopeful that this next generation won't have to suffer like a lot of us have. I know, like, my dad had so many autoimmune diseases, and he's not with us anymore, but I just I can only imagine how, you know, much less suffering he would have had if he had known about a gluten-free diet, or if LDN had been there to help. And maybe it had, but, you know, we just didn't know about it then. But, you know, so much suffering, and I know, you know, you've suffered, and probably a lot of the listeners, and I've suffered, but at least going forward, and then hopefully for generations to come, there'll be less chronic illness, because it really, you know, really can destroy lives. It's really sad. So that's kind of like the driving force for me, and my website, because I do work really, really hard on it. And so I have to have like a reason to work so hard. And that's one of the reasons, just to try to help prevent the kind of suffering that a lot of us have already experienced.
wonderful. Well, we'll leave it there, and this will be on the website, and people will be able to watch it and then read all your information. So thank you very much, Carrie, for joining us. and we look forward to seeing more of your recipes and input. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.